This video will walk you through the skin or the integument model. Once again, we are going to be walking through these terms in the order of your list of terms for Practical 1. The first term on the list is the epidermis, and so let's get a little bit closer here. The epidermis is the most superficial layer of the skin. Okay, and what we can see is this little squiggly line right here. Right, the little squiggly line is representing the deepest part of the epidermis, and of course where it joins together with the dermis. And so this entire major layer up here is the epidermis. It consists of multiple sublayers, right? And in order, we have number 1, just a single layer of blue cells, stratum basal. Next, number 2, the purpler or more purple layer right here that is multiple cell layers thick, that is the stratum spinosum. This skinnier blue line right here, number 3, is the stratum granulosum. Next, number 4 is representing the stratum lucidum, but keep in mind that the stratum lucidum is not found in hairy skin, which this is, but it's just there for demonstration purposes. And finally, the most superficial layer, number 5 up here, is the stratum corneum. Right. What I also want to show you is this right here is a sweat gland, and note that sweat glands have a pore on the surface of the skin, right? So they're not depositing onto the hair, they're not depositing into the hair follicle, they have their own individual pore, and that is number 6 right here. All right. So once again, this is the epidermis. Next major layer is the dermis. So from the squiggly line all the way down here to where we see the yellow. Okay, the dermis, as we know, is broken into 2 different areas. We have this squiggly part up here, and that is the papillary layer, and then the rest of the dermis, so from about here to here, is the reticular layer of the dermis. Now within the papillary layer, we see these little squiggly bumps. If we look to this other side of the model here, we can see that with the epidermis removed, we can see those individual bumps. So these structures are the dermal papillae. This specific sublayer is the papillary layer. This sublayer is the reticular layer. This entire major layer is the dermis. So keep in mind that there are those different terms to talk about the different structures and layers. All right, next, hair follicle. This here is the outside of a hair follicle, which is actually an invagination of the epidermis. All right, so here we can see the epidermis going all the way down, wrapping around the hair. On this model, the one hair has been removed, but we can still see the many layers of the hair follicle. This is sectioned through, and this one over here is whole, right? It's a whole follicle. You do not need to know all these different layers, just know that this entire thing is the hair follicle. Within the hair follicle is the hair root, right? So this is actually part of the hair root. Anything below the surface of the skin, below the corneum, is hair root. Anything above, right? So the hair that you can actually see, that you can brush, whatever, this is the hair shaft. Right. We know that the hair follicle can be manipulated, right? So the hair can actually be stood up straight and give us goosebumps and hair standing up straight, or it can be laid down, and that movement is possible with the erector pili muscle right here. Okay. An outpocketing of the hair follicle is the sebaceous gland. So this oil gland is going to deposit oil onto the hair root and ultimately up onto the surface of the skin. Remember, these sudoriferous sweat glands, right? Pick which one you like and go with it. I'm sure you'll pick sweat gland, but if you want, you can say sudoriferous gland. This actually deposits directly on the skin with its own pore. Okay, 2 more structures here. We have sensory receptors, right? This structure, these structures, these ones all the way up into the epidermis, all of these are sensing different things. Like even these here, any of these yellow structures, even with modifications on the outside, is representing nervous tissue, and therefore those are the sensory receptors. Okay? And finally, we know that the skin technically consists of major layer epidermis, major layer dermis, but in fact, both of these layers of the skin are associated with a third layer, which isn't technically part of the skin, but a very important association. All of this yellow down here is loose adipose connective tissue, and therefore this layer is the hypodermis or the superficial fascia. Pick which one you like and go with it. And that is the skin model.